it's always good to look back on some of the best horror games the industry has had to offer through the years and decades. Some titles have left a permanent mark, their legacy cemented by the effectiveness of their scares. Others may be lesser known but are no less terrifying despite their mechanics and presentation. Let's look at 14 of the best horror games of all time. Be warned though, several of these games aren't for the squeamish or faint of heart. Darkwood. Despite having over 12,000 user reviews on Steam and good critical acclaim, Darkwood is still somewhat of a niche survival horror title. Its open-world structure changes during the day, presenting eerie characters and various secrets as you scavenge for materials. At night, nightmarish creatures roam, prompting you to fight for survival. It's frantic and doesn't provide too much guidance, but Darkwood is worth sticking with for its unique aesthetic and extensive lore. The Witch's House MV. A remaster of the hit 2012 indie adventure The Witch's House MV may put some off with its RPG Maker visuals. Nevertheless, it tells a short but brutally effective tale of Viola, who enters a strange house to find a way to escape the forest. Death strikes often and unexpectedly, and as you solve puzzles, you'll learn more about the witch who inhabits the house and what she seeks above all. Resident Evil Village. Though it's more action-packed and fast-paced than Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, Resident Evil Village can still pile on the scares, whether you're running from vampire-like Lady Dimitrescu and her daughters, surviving the grotesque horrors of House Beneviento, or getting jump-scared by Lycans. There are plenty of horrors to experience. In terms of creature features, Resident Evil Village runs the whole gamut. Resident Evil 2 Remake. Resident Evil 2 Remake doesn't just offer excellent production values, stellar pacing, and compelling survival horror gameplay. It captures the terror of the original while expanding on it in new ways, whether through the over-the-shoulder perspective or the relentlessness of Mr. X. To call it one of the standard bearers for remakes today would be an understatement, since it's a fantastic game in its own right. Silent Hill 2. After numerous rumors, Silent Hill 2 is finally getting a remake, courtesy of Bloober Team, which means it's a great time to revisit the original. A pinnacle of psychological horror and storytelling, it tells the story of James Sunderland, who ventures to the fated town after receiving a letter from his dead wife. With stellar pacing, iconic creatures like Pyramid Head, and a story steeped in psychological trauma, Silent Hill 2 is horror gaming at its finest. Visage. When Silent Hills was cancelled and PT pulled from the PlayStation Store, several developers attempted to create their own walking sim-style horror games. Visage, developed by Sad Square Studio, is one of these, and stood out with its strong visuals and sound, along with creating an effective air of mystery and dread. Protagonist Dwayne Anderson awakens trapped in a house after killing his family. Why and how do 3 other stories factor into his predicament? You'll need to play and find out. Inscryption. Inscryption starts with the surreal intro of Luke Carter, inserting a floppy for Inscryption into his PC. From here, the player controls the game, partaking in card battles against the mysterious Leshy in a strange cabin while talking cards like a stoat. Stinkbug and more guide him. Things only get more brutal and bizarre as time goes on, which is to be expected from the mind behind Pony Island, but it's easily one of the more unique horror stories available. The Forest. Don't let the survival crafting of Endnight Games' open-world title put you off. There's a deep narrative to be had as the player searches for their missing son on a mysterious island teeming with mutants. When you're not exploring the underground and discovering all manner of body horrors, you may find yourself watched by said mutants during the day or fighting for your life against their raids at night. Soma. While you skulk about the dilapidated outpost Pathos 2, avoiding half-machine horrors, Soma is more than that. It's more than the confusion and outright helplessness that protagonist Simon feels. It's the overwhelming dread of existential crisis, a journey of consciousness and identity, ultimately causing one to question their very being. Unsettling, tightly designed, and ultimately enthralling, Soma is a trip. Amnesia: The Dark Descent. Over 12 years later, Amnesia: The Dark Descent is still a masterpiece, an incredibly written, disturbing tale of greed and cosmic horror. It starts simply enough. Protagonist Daniel awakens in a dark castle with no memories. Trying to piece together his identity and past, he's pursued by a horrendous shadow and does everything possible to survive. With its moody atmosphere, excellent use of sound and lighting, and impactful sanity mechanics, Amnesia: The Dark Descent still holds up today. Little Nightmares 2. The Little Nightmares universe was enthralling with its introduction of Six, the Maw, and horrendous beings lying beneath the surface. Little Nightmares 2 expands on this further, introducing Mono and the Pale City while explaining the identity of the Thin Man. The improved controls mesh well with the new set pieces and enemies, while the aesthetic remains as hauntingly beautiful and surreal as ever. The Dark Pictures anthology, House of Ashes. While Man of Medan and Little Hope felt like supermassive games in terms of gameplay, their stories and characters left much to be desired. House of Ashes upends this with a cast of special forces and their enemies forced to cooperate in Sumerian ruins to avoid death by horrendous monsters. With multiple perspectives and choices, a claustrophobic sense of terror, and a genuinely interesting story, it's perhaps Supermassive's best horror story yet. World of Horror. An ode to Junji Ito and H.P. Lovecraft. Presented with stark 1-bit visuals, World of Horror makes all kinds of horror tropes into one trippy package. The world is pretty much on the brink of destruction, and you have to navigate through Shiokawa, Japan, solving investigations and making choices to save it, probably. With 5 characters, 10 mysteries, and multiple endings, it's worth checking out in early access, even if the dead ends and roguelite structure can prove repetitive. Dead Space. Mixing event horizon and exploration, immersive environmental storytelling, and some truly terrifying creatures, Dead Space is just a nightmarish experience. In a good way, of course. Enough can't be said about the excellent level design, the attention to detail, or the memorable story as you slowly descend into madness along with Isaac on the Ishimura. Dead Space 2 may be bigger and more beautiful, but the original will always be a stellar survival horror game. Bloodborne. Even with mechanics encouraging a more aggressive playstyle, Bloodborne is easily a horror game. The Gothic Victorian architecture, the grotesque beings permeating Yharnam and its people, the cosmic horror and subsequent descent into madness, everything about it mixes the macabre with the psychological. Surviving the Hunter's Dream isn't even the end, as the Hunter's Nightmare and Chalice dungeons play host to even more terrors. That's all for now. If you enjoy what you saw, please hit the like button. And if you're new to the channel, now is a great time to subscribe. We upload brand new videos every single day. After subscribing, don't forget to enable all notifications by clicking the bell icon. Thanks for watching this video, and we'll see you next time, right here on Gaming Bolt.